Hi everyone, sit down and grab yourself a drink because today we are talking about the hate towards Black women or misogynoir because I believe with knowledge comes peace. So, misogynoir is a term that was coined by the scholar Moya Bailey, which means misogyny that is directed towards Black women, where race and gender both play a role in the bias because we know there is bias towards women or bias towards Black men. But that in combination, you get something very different. And so she created the term in 2010 to address the misogyny directed towards Black women in American visual and popular culture. And I think as Black women, just going about your day, you can see how certain celebrities, whether it's Lizzo, Nicki Minaj, Megan Thee Stallion, how these women are treated and disrespected in comparison to other races of women. And I say these women are accessible. These are accessible Black women because they're all over TV, they're in magazines, they're all over social media. And so when they get attacked, it oftentimes shows a hidden contempt for the everyday Black woman. And I don't believe whatsoever that everyone hates Black women. In some spaces, I've actually felt more embraced for being a Black woman. And I remember a woman saying, she thinks it's a mistake to have Black women sleeping at night thinking everyone hates them. But I've come across many Black women, especially young girls in this social media age, that ask questions like, why are we so attacked? Why does the world hate us? No other race is treated this way. And so I thought, let me just give my thoughts as to why Black women experience hatred socially from other groups. And these groups are Black men, non Black men, and non Black women, which is everyone else. And so I believe this level of hatred is definitely at a higher rate than any other group. And at its core, I believe Black women matter more in society. I believe Black women have a greater influence on how others feel about themselves, and Black women do not behave how the masses would want them to behave. But let me break down, what I think the causes of this hatred is. And I want to emphasize socially because this is about how people engage with Black women online and in real life in a current day. It's not about slavery or the history of Black women. I'm talking about, your regular Black girl in class and that white guy is acting very negative towards you, or that Black boy is acting very negative, or that non Black woman. Just some of the reasons why in our current day there is heightened hatred towards Black women and girls, right? So, firstly, when we talk about misogynoir, we have to acknowledge that, of course, it exists because of general misogyny and stereotypes. So, as Black women, we are women, and men in general have always had issues with women. And I think that's why they've gone to such great lengths to control women. And you see in this social media era, the growth of MG Tao and incels and all these hateful groups that have issues with women. And this has grown because in the current day, unlike in the past, a man is not guaranteed a woman, especially a man living in the West. And this creates a lot of resentment towards women. And when we look at general misogyny and we ask ourselves, well, what do men, these type of men hate about women? If you've ever been down a deep hole, a misogynistic forum, you will see that they hate strong and independent women and single mothers. And when we look at these things, we can see things that people associate with Black women. And so a lot of the I don't need a man narrative was pushed by Western Black women. And I believe not out of choice, but oftentimes due to not being able to rely on the men in their communities and basically having to make lemonade out of lemons. And misogynistic men hate independent, confident women, right? And if you look at our public image as Black women, it's very boss, it's very independent, it's very strong. And so in these spaces, weaker women, or at least women that portray a weaker image to get what they want, are always preferred in these spaces. But it's not just these spaces anymore, it's general, because most men are having struggles with getting women, about their masculinity, many different struggles. Also, due to the Black community in the West shying away from contraception, many people associate Black women with being baby mamas, especially with Western Black men not valuing the construct of marriage. Not that other races are perfect in their marriages, but they value the construct of marriage and they know how important it is, especially when you are wealthy, to have a wife. We have Western Black men calling it Eurocentric. And so Black American women, of course, who are the image of Black women, are going to have the highest out of wedlock rate. And you see similar trends in some parts of Europe and the Caribbean. And although, 42% of Black American women don't have kids, or most Western African women are married before having children, that's definitely enforced or preferred in Western African communities. That is ignored because Black women are seen as a monolith. And so the single mother, baby mama image is placed on every Black woman. And I always bring up this article where in the 1960s, Black men actually told Black women to stop using contraception because they saw it as genocide. And the women responded by saying that we know Black men see us as evil and all these negative things. But since many do not look after their children, they need contraception. And so it's quite shocking to read how Black American women felt in the 60s. And it's unfortunate that although Black men were so anti-contraception back then, and those suspicions around contraception still exist in our communities, and as a result, there is this high out of wedlock rate, their grandsons are probably out here criticizing Black single mothers. And I always say the hatred of women is always rooted in fear, but specifically when it comes to the hatred of single mothers in the Manosphere, or in general, the hatred is rooted in this idea that, unlike in patriarchal societies where if a man marries a woman, he has children with her, she's trapped in that marriage because any alternative would have her seen as damaged goods. However, in the West, the anger comes from knowing that as a man, you can have a child with a woman, but she still has a choice to seek another man if that relationship is no longer fulfilling her needs. And you see, for example, with Sierra, she experienced a lot of misogynoir after marrying the quarterback Russell Wilson, after having a child previously with the rapper Future. And Russell has fully embraced Future's son, and this has triggered many men because in their mind, she should be damaged goods and not with one of the highest paid athletes. And all misogynistic men hate these things in women. And sometimes Black women become the face of these things. And so it's no surprise that 9 times out of 10, any man who hates women has a very strong hatred for Black women. And I always say, this thing is growing now, this hatred of women. So it's not a surprise that online you see a lot of Black women hatred. And I think there's also a spiritual element. I'm a spiritual individual, and I see as the original women, we have a stronger connection to the matriarchal societies of the past. And I think men see that, and they see that we see through their fake masculine image that they try to build up. Through us, we trigger the fear and insecurity in them, and that's why we are often attacked, especially by men who hate women. Another reason why misogynoir is so prevalent in our society is because of the public degradation of Black women by Black men, which normalizes our abuse and disrespect. And I think the relationship we have with Black men in the West is very damaging to our image and the way people interact with Black women as a whole. But I will dedicate my next video into dissecting the hate that some Western Black men have for Black women. And if you can't wait for that, you can just get my ebook, and the link to my website where all my articles are is on the last page. And so moving on from that, as that deserves its own video, is Black women do not interact with non-Black men the way their women interact with Black men. So this is a reason that I think misogyny is so prevalent in our society. And when you see non-Black men engaging in or making disparaging comments about Black women, beyond just general misogyny, because other races definitely do not get the same level of hate, or sometimes trying to engender friendship with Black men, in spaces where you can tell these men are not racist, right? They're embracing Black culture. Their icons are Black sportsmen and all of this. You can see that these are not racist individuals. It appears to me that it is because we do not interact with them the way non-Black women interact with Black men. Now, Black men obviously engage with every race of woman, and I believe society exaggerates the rate due to celebrities and the fact that they dislike it so much. And like I said, I have tons of articles on desirability, relationships between different races, and I will also turn these into videos. But non-Black men see this, right? They see relationships between Black men and women in their communities. And if they didn't, white or other races of men wouldn't be flying halfway across the world looking for partners or foregoing relationships altogether, creating MGTOW. They would stand their ground and stop the big bad Black man from forcing their women to date them. But we all know that relationships exist because the woman says it can exist. It's her choice. And so they see their counterparts altering their body shapes and actively selling themselves to Black men. It may not be everyone, but it's enough. And so when you look at Black women, because of our conditioning, you see Black men are kings, and I would rather be single than date outside my race, especially if she is highly attractive.
Would you have any relationship with any Black guys at all?
Oh, of course, man. Every day. It's all about this to this. You know what I mean?
It's very rare to see Black girls acting like that around white guys. And back in the day, I recall seeing some non-Black men refer to Black women as loyal because we prefer Black men. But post-Kardashian era, and as it becomes harder to access women, this has changed to contempt because people see how it affects their lives. And you can even see in cultures where relations between Black men and other groups of women are higher, the men appear to be more disrespectful to Black women. So Black women in France talk about the misogynoir they face from North African Arab men because their women fetishize Black Muslim men and vice versa. But Black Muslim women stick to Black men. And in addition, in the UK, a lot of the extreme trolls you see online targeting Black women are of Somali heritage because the women are viewed as highly attractive, but Black women typically do not find men in that community attractive. And so a lot of the time, misogynoir is a response to people thinking we view them negatively. And so you can't always internalize and take it personally because Black women, unfortunately, do not make certain people feel good about themselves. And because one Black woman is viewed as all, if one Black woman says something, they project that on all Black women and attempt to make us all feel how they felt by that one Black woman or certain comments about not finding certain men attractive. And so online misogynoir, oftentimes created by Black men, is never cancelled by other races because misogyny means that there's a lot of resentment towards us from non-Black men. And this is often due to, envy around Black men's position in the sexual marketplace. So that's often pushed upon Black women because of misogyny. And so they oftentimes engage in it to blame Black women for Black men stepping on their toes, in a sense. Even in Hitler's book, he speaks about how the Jews made German women their whores. And I think racism as a concept has a lot to do with access to women. I think about how, like, Nigerians, for example, are one of the most educated ethnic groups, but conversations around education or successful communities, especially in that space, are always Asians. It makes you think, well, why is someone so eager to talk about Asian success and not so much, Nigerian success, West African success. And I think that has a lot to do with accessibility to women and different dynamics within relationships. And what I've noticed is that with non-black men, with all men's growing inability to form relationships and access the women they desire, those that engage in misogyny sometimes relish in this idea that there's a group of women, us, who struggle in getting men, especially the men they want. And since that is what black women keep spreading online and people have different agendas, and so it kind of makes them feel good that, hey, it's not just us men struggling, there's groups of women who struggle in this space. And that's why I think black women need to be cautious of what they share and publicize. And so, as I stated, in some of my articles, that these men have hatred for all women. But when a woman's worth is placed on her desirability, it's always going to be easier to attack black women because of false narratives surrounding our desirability and gender imbalances. But I will have a whole video on desirability and black women. Another reason why misogyny is prevalent in our society is because black women safeguard black culture. And so when we look at culture, I think it's safe to say black culture, specifically black American culture, is the most popular emulated culture. Without black people, I don't think pop culture would exist as we know it. And many non-black artists would have nothing to base their art off of. But statistically, it's shown that black men have an easier time in multicultural spaces than black women. And why do you think that is? Beyond my previous point, society knows that black men are hungrier for validation to such an extent that many will allow non-black people to use the N-word and appropriate our culture. And for the most part, whenever you see someone speaking out against anti-blackness or cultural appropriation, it's a black woman. And there's probably a black man in the comments saying, hey, it's no big deal. And people see this. They see that with black men, they can say and do anything. And people like fools. People like people they can do anything around. And black women are quick to say, no, you can't say the N-word, or you don't look good in those box braids. And this breeds resentment from non-black people. Therefore, the hatred we face is not solely race-based, as many groups enjoy the presence of black men because they know they can say a lot of things that they can't really say with us. And so we are trying to safeguard our culture because we know from rock and roll to disco to breakdancing, it's all been taken from our culture, and we want to keep things in-house like other races do. But when we express that, we become an enemy socially because people will feel like, hey, they have a very basic existence. And if they aren't co-opting black culture, they feel like they're nothing. And so when black women come and take that away, in a sense, what makes them feel special and good about themselves, they're clearly not going to think highly of us. Another reason why there is hatred towards black women, I feel, especially on social media, is because of attention and clout. Black women are often targeted online for attention, for clout. And I remember this situation in the UK where someone by the name of Keith Doob, who had the podcast 3 Shots of Tequila, was exposed for making very disgusting comments towards dark-skinned black women. And this individual at the time was actually making a documentary on black mental health. And it was one part in the documentary, he's interviewing a black woman and discussing her issues. And I think it was quite laughable considering the impact that such online abuse probably has on the mental health of young black girls. But what's most important is what he said in his apology. And he basically says black women were the easiest targets because they reacted. He goes on to say, I used to say the only way to stop or reduce this behavior was for black women to ignore the trolls and let them move on to the next group of people. And so I think black women obviously just don't understand what he's saying. We are so reactive. And as a result, we are actively targeted. And this is statistically proven because we are 84% more likely than white women to be mentioned in abusive and problematic tweets, according to Amnesty. And I've seen a tweet where there was a guy and he was putting white women on a pedestal, and he said, look, I don't find white women attractive. I just wanted to see black women's reaction. And originally, such hateful tweets, they would get like 10 likes. But then you have a bunch of black women, even some verified, making such content go viral by engaging in it and allowing the world, young black girls included, to see it. And I've come to realize that the more you react to misogynoir, the more it grows, because there's a lot of miserable men, right, who don't have access to women, and they see that, look, I can tweet something, I can say something about a black woman, and I will have like thousands in my mentions. And even the creator of Black Girl Magic has suggested a sexual element to the behavior. I've seen SoundCloud rappers, and they're engaging in misogynoir to gain traffic to their social media platforms. And I think as black women, we lack the understanding of how powerful our silence is. I honestly think our silence would make people go like insane, and I also suggest you stop sharing misogynoir on your social platforms, because I think all it does is damage black women, because I think the mindset behind it is, look what we go through, look how disrespectful we are, but no one truly cares. This is a very self-serving community and everyone likes to play the victim. So you need to stop engaging with trolls, because half the time you're arguing with a fake picture, a fake account. You're arguing with Nigerian Prince and it's Somali boy. You're arguing with Brad and it's Tyrone. You're arguing with Tyrone and it's Brad. And so it's best to just block and report. And a lot of the time, especially when we're trolled from black men, what I've realized is that they do it especially for attention. And I think many black men are not dependable in the current society. Most of them cannot command our attention, loyalty, affection by the typical vehicles of manhood. Because in other societies, how it plays out is that men create a world where the women are so dependent on them that the women have no choice but to pay attention to them, to defer to them, to listen to them, to obey them. But black men in the West are not in this position. So they have to find another way to command our attention, and they do this through our emotions and by crossing boundaries. And this is why they bait you online and even bait you in real life. For example, we all have this thing, whether we live in the UK, the US, the Germany, of this black man who's purposely walking in front of you with a non-black woman. And it's like, why do they want us to look at them if they don't care about black women? Like, do they hate us, or do they use hateful behavior to keep us emotionally invested in them? And they need our attention so they can turn the power differential back in their favor, so we can see them rejecting us. Because if we don't see them rejecting us, then it has no effect. They need us to care. And emotional outbursts are like giving these men sex. It's the same energy, and I suggest don't give them either. And also, from what I see in the UK, we are definitely going through a black male mental health crisis, right? So many horrendous crimes. I think post-COVID, something went a little off with many black men, and we're seeing so many horrendous crimes, horrific crimes committed by black men here in the UK. And I'm sure you see similar things wherever you are. And I just think that sometimes, I'm sure you engage with black men, and I'm specifying black men because these are the men in our spaces. You see them say something probably online that is so crazy, and I think engaging with them is almost feeding these issues, because a lot of them are not sane, a lot of them have issues. And I think you have to think about what is the outcome of engaging these men and feeding their hatred and deluded thoughts. I think that's dangerous. So it would be very nice if black women could get to a space where they stopped engaging with men they don't know online. It shouldn't be like, let's be here and engage with everyone we don't know. People don't deserve access to you like that. Let's get to a place where if you don't know a man, you don't speak to him online. Now, another reason why there is hatred towards Black women is envy. Now, as Black women, even though we see the way people interact with us can be very negative in comparison to other races of women, we are still very hyper visible and influence culture from the way we speak, dress, everything, which creates envy from other races. And so the way some non-Black men are threatened by Black men is the same way some non-Black women are threatened by Black women, because in no way, shape, or form were we meant to be a threat for anything that they desire in life, be it beauty, men, education, success, wealth. And the way some non-Black men behave when they see a Black man taking up space is the way many non-Black women behave when Black women are taking up space. And I think many non-Black women just cannot handle when Black women are occupying spaces that they thought were only for them. And furthermore, I think because of the dynamic that exists between non-Black women and Black men, the jealousy of Black women is sometimes pushed to the side to embolden this idea that we are jealous because some non-Black women desire Black men, even though they desire to take our position and not the other way around. Another issue is that society sticks racism on everything an envious non-Black woman does. But whenever a Black woman says something negative, it's like she's bitter and jealous. And so society kind of builds something where the jealousy that many non-Black women have for Black women is never really exposed, because not every non-Black woman is racist. Many are just jealous. And I think in this Kim K, Kylie Jenner world, where Black men are seen as accessories and ways to be cool, they begin to see Black women as competition. And just in my own life, I don't know what it is about me, but I've just had a lot of non-Black women jealous of me, to extents that, I had two older white women in my workplace, so jealous, so triggered by me. And it's like, it's strange when you have these experiences and then you come online and it's like, you are bitter and you wish you were this and you were this. And it's like, so I think it's kind of silly to think that we would be the jealous ones when certain people are used to a certain position. And when that's compromised, Crofts and Meghan Markle, you see how these women behave. And so that's another reason why, misogynoir is normalized, because a lot of Black women may face hatred in different spaces, and non-Black women don't speak out, right? If a Black woman is being praised, then they jump in and say, what about all of us? But when a Black woman is being disrespected, it's crickets. Now, another reason that Black women face a lot of hatred in our society is definitely because Black women have become the face of liberalism. And being a liberal has definitely become like gendered, because there's so many more men that are now moving to the conservative space. And so when you have Black women who are typically having liberal views, and these are the only ones they put on TV, these are the loudest on the mic, and so we become the face when we align with many polarizing liberal issues, whether it's feminism, LGBTQ, BLM. And so when these movements exist and there's little variety in the media when it comes to the views of Black women, those that oppose such movements will hate you. And even though I find Candace Owens extremely gross, there's a bit of a joy in me that some people will see like, wow, there's a Black woman and she doesn't have to think one way. It doesn't matter if it's so problematic. It's just forcing a message that we are not a monolith. And I think when you make yourself a social justice warrior, in turn attracting tragedy into your life because of what these activists vocalize on a daily, such as I can't breathe, and you want to, disrupt the Western nuclear family, people who want to maintain that structure will have a lot of hatred towards you. And I always say to Black women, like, you have to ask yourself, other races of women, they face misogyny, they face discrimination, sexism, but they don't really talk about stuff as publicly as you do. And you may want to ask yourself why that is, because the world is not your diary. And Black women are constantly speaking up for groups that rarely speak up for them, and movements that don't prioritize their issues. Most recently, we see with the Israel-Palestine. And look, Black people, to me, advocating for Arabs it's a mind-blowing thing for me. And look, you can read about that on my website if you get my ebook, because some things you can't even say in public anymore. But I don't even know what's going on with that. But Black women are not the world's savior. And I think it would be best saving your voice and your image for issues that directly affect Black women. Because I always ask myself, why is the person who is both Black and female, having the least privilege, so focused on saving the world? Shouldn't they be helping us? And I'm sure you know this quote. People would say 3 things you shouldn't talk about: politics, religion, and money, right? Because these are triggering topics. And I think our inability to do that really emboldens and just opens up the floodgates of hatred and misogynoir, because we constantly speak on these polarizing issues. And I think when you have no line of defense and you want to become the face of such movements, these can really impede your progression in life, right? And I remember this book by Minda Hart, and she's talking about how Black women need certain tools to progress in corporate America. And she highlights that what she sees is it's white men as opposed to white women who are giving Black women a chance. And I'm going to look at this with nuance, because I know that white men are more dominant in these spaces. But the point is that if these people are at the top, typically white, typically male, sometimes conservative, and you align with things that attack them, they're not going to help you. And so I think as Black women, not to go off, sure, this was an explanatory point that yes, because you are the face of liberalism, this is why misogynoir is prevalent. But just to let you know that when you make yourself the face of certain views, you contribute to making yourself public enemy number 1. And I think you can see currently that a lot of organizations, a lot of people, they're getting their lick back on Black women, right? You guys wanted to run out there, protest, put on your LinkedIn, all these polarizing things. And then when you're done, you have to go back to these people on where you live, where to get your food, where your kids will go to school. And you think these people are going to be inviting and positive to you. I think because Black women love to share every opinion, we are seen as a monolith. And there's just many groups and demographics who just plainly think that Black women don't like them, right? And so it's human nature to not like what dislikes you. And I honestly think that's the root of a lot of the bias and resentment I see from people who are not, losers, is that they just think that, hey, these people don't like us because Black women, who they see as a monolith, keep speaking this way. And so I'm obviously not going to like them. And I think this is why I push for Black women to stay silent on most topics and not feel pressured to answer and speak about everything. Because when you are too opinionated, it does cause a lot of damage, especially as someone who has no line of defense and you rely quite heavily on external forces. And so overall, I love being a Black woman. Wouldn't want it any other way. But looking at each factor, I'm sure you can see that, yeah, there are some things where, these people are losers and it's beyond your control. It's not your fault that, you prefer to date inside your race. It's not your fault that you want to safeguard your culture like others. But there are some areas like the liberalism where there is knowledge in knowing that, okay, these things maybe have a negative impact on your life. And in a space where you may want people to like you for a job, you may want to learn that, hey, I can change these things, or I can choose not to speak on these things so it doesn't hinder me in this space. And I think as a Black woman, human beings in general, when you have something to offer, people will want to ruin your day and not see you flourish because of their own insecurities, triggers, and failures. So it's important not to be so externally focused and seek validation from this world. There are many reasons why people have hatred towards Black women. We see it, we experience it every day. It's best to focus on other Black women, lifting them up. And let me just end on this point that I want Black women to understand that there are more options for them besides exhausting yourself, begging for power from others, caping for the whole world, and enabling someone's victim mentality. Misogyny is real. Stop asking questions, why? Understand it. Understand how it moves, how it operates, how it changes, and what shapes it takes in any given day. And then learn how to safely cut out any interaction it brings you. Learn how to protect yourself physically, socially, emotionally. Learn how to create a social group that protects you. Black doctors, Black friends, lawyers. Put yourself in positions to protect other Black women and kill this idea that the only way to help Black women as a group is to fight or beg. Kill it with power. You have options, you have people in your corner, you have power. Use it wisely.